appearance of the void.
Hello, gentle listener. Welcome to The Void. We have a very special guest here today, Maynard James Keenan. He has released a new baby into the world, an alien baby called Existential Reckoning by his band Puscifer. I would say, Maynard, that it has like shades of 2001: A Space Odyssey, 70s supercomputers, and a goth club. And I was speaking to Carina, and she said being in this band is kind of like 2001: A Space Odyssey, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and Monty Python. What is your experience of this particular album? That's a lot of...
It's a lot.
That is a lot. Do you want me to make this like, yeah?
Well, my gears are turning.
Awesome.
Yeah, it really is. That's coming from Carina and coming from you. That's an absolute compliment. Anytime you can somehow be described as being part Monty Python,
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. So yeah, this is kind of a three-ring circus in its own way.
Are you the bear? Are you the dancing bear or the conductor?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think I'm
moves.
many of those things. I wear many hats in the circus.
Yeah.
Mostly just the dancing monkey. But,
yeah. Well, you do it good. People seem to be into it. You know, there's cheering.
Yeah, so I think part of the craft work, Peter Gabriel element to this album, for sure is the Fairlight. So it kind of lends itself to that 2001: Space Odyssey.
Totally.
For sure. But I would lean more toward Art of Noise.
Yeah.
In the danceability part.
You can dance to it, which I love. Like, that's one of the cool things about this band. Like, rock is cool to, like, stare into the distance and, like, gently weep. But, like, it's also fucking cool when, everyone can get down. And I feel like there's a lot on here you could get down to.
Yes, I agree.
Which is, like, a positive...
Boogie till you can't.
Yeah, and I've always loved, there's always been a bit of a smirk about this band. There's always been, like, I remember reading press releases and you like calling things like Donkey Punch the Night and V's for Vagina, and I was like, it's so good to hear people not take themselves too seriously. Like, it's, people take themselves so seriously. Was that a conscious decision to embrace your silly bear side? Your silly dancing monkey?
Well, you kind of have to,
yeah.
I think. It's an absurd world we live in. If you're going on, heaven forbid, if you spend any time on Twitter, if you don't have a sense of humor, you're going to come out of there missing a limb.
Yeah. What makes you laugh the hardest?
Absurdity.
Yeah.
There's some pretty absurd things that my friends will forward me.
Yeah.
A meme or two about some absurdity and how, I guess it's...
The world is a
mystical
mystical
never
place.
thought we'd be living in a time like we're living in, with just so many absurdities stacked on absurdities to the point where it becomes norm. I don't know. I don't know how we're going to top this. This is a good one.
Well, what's it like being a man of the earth? You're out there, you're tilling the fields. You're pretty close to it, like to the, I feel like, this is a question I got to ask you, but I guess I feel on some level you've kind of reconnected with something that we did forever, which is not absurd and of this time, which is like, working things around the natural rhythms of things. What is kind of your experience as a man of the earth? How has that conditioned the way you've experienced this fucking weird time?
I think it's, there's an element of observation that you kind of have to develop and hone in farming, in grape growing, in cooking, and in songwriting.
Yeah.
I feel like it's all kind of interconnected, and I feel like somehow we've lost touch with that when it comes to the political forum and online fights that people just go out of their way to start just so the clickbait happens and some motherfucker's making money.
They're not making any money
on the click-throughs, but they're just starting fights and leaving the room, right? And they're just watching the
It's like a cockfight.
The money be counted.
Yeah, well, it's a
cockfight.
cockfight.
Just start cockfights and leave.
Yeah, it's weird. So I
don't know. I feel like growing shit. You can't. It changes you. It kind of grounds you in a way, and you can't. When Mother Nature decides to change her mind about something, you can cry about it, I suppose. But there's nothing really you can do. You have to learn to let go.
Yeah.
And think of the next steps and prepare for the next time around that you get the rug pulled out from underneath you. So, I don't know. I think they're arguing over some pretty petty things and missing the big picture threats. I don't know about you, but I feel like I had a pretty good history teacher.
Yeah?
And the guys who pick skin color as a fight, they never win. I don't know why.
It's really strange.
Keep doing that.
It's pretty cyclical, isn't it? I mean, the world's been kind of fucked up for a long time. It's just gotten to when you get to 8 billion strong, it gets pretty real. Like, it's crowded on this planet. Did you kind of seek out that level of groundedness after being like a tour road dog for so long? Because it seems like it's kind of a pretty transient gypsy life to be a musician.
Well, I moved around a lot as a kid, but I was in Michigan. I lived in the middle of a peach orchard. My dad had a huge garden. I worked, picking asparagus. That's not I don't know if you ever picked asparagus commercially, but
I have not.
You really start to learn. You start to learn respect for that piece of asparagus on your plate after you actually have to sit there in the sun with your legs up in a thing like you're at the gynecologist's office picking asparagus between your legs as you slowly go down through the sun.
I'm always doing
with
that.
With a hat that doesn't quite cover you.
Well, were you ever singing in the fields? Blues music began as music sung in the fields. Rock and roll is all stolen.
Well, the friends that I was picking with, it was a whole family of daughters who worked for their parents. The daughters, in order to get through that field, all they kept singing was "Money, money, money, asparagus, money, 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 money," because that's the only way that they're going to get from one end to the other, is to remind themselves that they're getting paid.
That is amazing.
$2 over minimum wage to do it.
Did you harmonize?
No.
Did you get in? Come on, Maynard, get in there.
I started to, and then they shut me down.
Oh, well, I guess now people have been listening. I mean, okay, so, but on a Puscifer thread, you haven't done, I mean, I'm sure there's harmonies on some of your albums, but you're known as a pretty singular vocalist, whereas what you've done with Carina, I think, is really interesting. And I was saying to her the other day, like, she just does these surprising things. Like, she's going down a path and then she'll do something like, oh, that's really cool. How, she was telling me about her first audition with you where she was covered in bug bites and, like, wearing a shroud to cover up, and she's like, it was pretty, daunting. Can you tell me about, like, why you chose her to harmonize with, and what kind of struck you about her and how that's kind of changed?
Well, we felt sorry for her because she was a leper. No, she's a lead vocalist, and she understands, in a way, I guess I've been describing this like in a culinary way.
Yeah.
There's a core there. There's a sound, there's a story. And then my vocal and some of Matt's guitar parts and her vocal, we have to think of ourselves as a little bit of the lemon juice or the salt or the vinegar that's going to enhance the dish.
Yeah.
We don't want to come in and just douse the whole thing in Tabasco sauce.
Yeah.
Or Thai chilies. You can't, then you're not going to taste anything.
No.
So she just naturally writes from a perspective, listening to what I'm doing. We all kind of write from an enhancement point of view.
Yeah.
For this particular dish, as it were.
So she said she immersed herself in this effects box for like hours and days, and Matt got into his Fairlight. Was there anything that you kind of got absorbed in during this process? Like, do you read a lot while you're writing, or do you do the opposite? You got heaps of like Carl Jung coming through everything you've ever done, but I know you don't talk about words, but just in terms of like what you read.
Yeah, well, it wasn't really so much what I was reading. It was more about just what was happening around us and the changes. listening to my grandparents, listening to my parents, listening to aunts and uncles and other friends who have seen things.
Yeah.
Just those kind of perspectives that from where they see them. So a lot of it is storytelling.
Was that like a big thing that passed down to your family?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an entire mini series of dad jokes that come out of my dad. None of them good, but they're dad jokes, and so. But in telling an elaborate dad joke, you have to embellish and you have to sell the story.
Yeah.
To make somebody forget that they're about to get clotheslined by a dad joke.
It's all subterfuge. That's what you've learned. You've been hiding things in your songs forever. Little buried things.
There's a few clotheslines in this one.
Yeah, there is, and it's great. Like I got the lyrics sent to me. I know I'm not allowed to talk about them, but it's great seeing them written down. Like it's cool. Just the pictures you can make with this and having these musicians who are also making pictures and, like exploring all these different synths and textures and stuff. What kind of freedom has this project given you that your other outlets haven't? Because Matt's an interesting cat.
I don't know that I would ever qualify it like that.
Yeah.
I think it's not so much freedom. It's more about reacting to conversations.
Yeah.
You're going to have different conversations with your parents than you are with the first person you ever dated.
Yeah. So
So I feel like that's conversations are going to change. So if you're a good listener, if you kind of like from that culinary point of view, if you kind of always take the role of being a little bit of squeeze of lemon or the salt on the dish, you can then be the support piece.
Yeah.
For whatever that conversation is and with that group of people.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of taken that role. So I never really think of it in terms of what I can't do.
Yeah.
I just think in terms of what fits here and what doesn't fit here.
And you guys were talking about this time on the planet on some level? That is the conversation?
I think a lot of the stuff, if you study history, there's plenty of these things and these conversations could be had at various points in our history.
Yeah.
So this, like you said, it's cyclical. So if you're writing from that kind of perspective of understanding cycles and understanding just human behavior and observation of human nature, action, reaction, breaking everything down to ones and zeros, emotions, landscapes of tragedies and successes, they all have their signature. There's a map in there somehow. So as an artist, you're constantly trying to identify that map and then apply it to maybe some more colloquial phrasings or maybe topical.
Yeah.
To just kind of bring it into perspective for now, although these are conversations that humans have had with each other since the beginning.
Yeah. Do you think we're in a good trajectory? Do you think humanity's on a good trajectory or a bad one? Or is that too black and white?
I don't think it matters.
Really?
I think it's going to bounce. The scales are going to tip back and forth. The pendulum's going to swing to and fro. Things are going to resolve.
Yeah.
In one way or another, and then as soon as it resolves, it's going to swing back the other way, and you're going to have to fight, to get it back to the center a little bit. I feel like that's kind of a missing piece. If we can kind of sashay on down the Star Trek analogy, or sorry, Star Wars.
Yeah.
Wow. Star Wars. Some of the first where they kind of loop back around to show you episode 1, 2, and 3 after having seen 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
The very beginning of that whole Star Wars series, the entire universe is kind of policed by the Jedi.
Yeah.
You have an entire Jedi council, and they're kind of like running around, kind of poking in other people's business. And the Sith rise up because everything was out of balance.
Yeah. It does feel like things were out of balance.
That was a necessary swing of the pendulum to start that whole process. Then you get to meet Luke Skywalker, who attempts to bring it back toward the middle.
Yeah. It does feel like the pendulum is swinging pretty hard right now. Like there's definitely some black and well, I mean, do you think, okay, so I have this like beautiful dream that after this we're going to have this glorious 20s where everyone has like a newly rediscovered love of live music and they realize what they had when it was taken away from them. What do you think, and what's it been like? I mean, you were meant to be on tour for 2 years. What is it like not having that feedback, that instant feedback loop of the live experience for you?
Well, I enjoy playing live. It's not. I don't need the feedback.
Yeah.
On it. I just enjoy the recording and writing process.
Ah, so you're more of a creator.
I enjoy performing of it, but I don't need the live performance necessarily.
Really?
I do enjoy it. I do love it, but it's not something I need. I need to write. I need to make myself go into that space and write these stories, and then be able to successfully record them in a way that I feel comfortable, or the way that I feel successful with.
Yeah.
Having conveyed the idea, even if it's a puzzle you're never going to solve, it doesn't matter. I solved my own puzzle by creating the puzzle. That's enough for me. So,
you made the puzzle.
And I really enjoy the puzzle of winemaking. So the road didn't really. I miss it a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't miss it as much as I would miss not being able to make wine and be home.
Really? Well, is there a connection there? I mean, you're kind of bringing enjoyment on some level. I mean, I don't know if that's too like twee way of putting it. I mean, you are kind of pulling things out of your own earth. I don't know. Yeah,
or just what we've been able to create back here in Arizona with an actual industry, and trying to tell stories in that bottle from a place and a time.
Yeah.
It's been quite the struggle and quite the journey, and I think we've kind of nailed it. But also expressing it in a way that Tool, Perfect Circle, and Puscifer might, which takes some people a while to kind of get it.
Yeah. How different is it? Like, obviously this is like you and Matt are very deeply. How different is it to like maybe making beats, like the way drums, like Danny's like a multi-limbed beast. How does the sort of drum element of your creative process affect the way you do vocals, or is it kind of hard to pull apart?
Well, rhythms are definitely at the core.
Yeah.
And then bringing it back around to winemaking, it's the same thing. The rhythm is going to dictate your cadence, and you can't stomp on the other cadence. You have to work with it, even if it's a counter beat.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens in the cellar. I'm not going to try to force a Pinot Noir to act like a Cabernet. I'm not going to force a Sagrantino to be a Pinot Grigio. It's just not going to happen. You have to listen to the rhythm of the thing in front of you.
Yeah.
And act accordingly to those grapes, to that produce that you're going to cook.
Yeah.
All those things.
Do you mess with particular philosophers or like the Tao Te Ching or anything like that? Are you into those sort of theories?
A little bit, but not,
What are you into? Like, what do you read? What are you into? Like digesting?
I haven't read anything in a very long time.
Really?
I read a lot of articles by philosophers or people who are kind of in a way like almost tarot card readers when it comes to financial predictions.
Really?
If that makes any sense? Like just people that are looking at, trying to look at things from a wider perspective of human trajectory. But to be honest, I'm watching more films and television. I know it sounds like stupid, but
it's a golden age.
But it's having worked with producers and having worked with people that work in film, and actors, and from everything from an extra to the caterer all the way up through as an actor to some co-producer to an actual director to photography. I've worked with a lot of those people, and I've seen a raw script and then finally seen it on the screen, and you go, how the fuck did they get that out of that script that I read? Like the whole point of that film and the whole point of the story, they blew it on, that whatever the love interests.
Yeah, many filthy hands.
Kind of blew it. So a lot of times when I'm watching film, I'm watching it from that architectural point of view to see, in this TV series, in this movie, if it starts to go sideways and it looks like a shit film, I'm like, okay, let's find the carrot in the middle of all this that the writer actually wanted to convey, and let's have fun with figuring out how some douchebags in a boardroom ruined it because they were trying to sell tickets instead.
It's many filthy hands on all the things.
Christina, Maynard?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're actually out of time,
Oh.
in case you want to ask a final question.
Go for it.
Okay, so we have a theme on this show called Degrees of Heaviness, which is the whole concept of heavy music. So we've asked our R&B soul producer last week what his heaviest song is, and he said 10 zillion years, is it Light Years Away, but the Stevie Wonder song. So I was wondering, what to you feels like heavy music? Like, what has weight? What is a song that for you has significant weight?
That I'm a fan of?
Yeah, I mean, you can hate it if you want.
Okay. Oh, no. For me, weight comes from mood.
Yeah.
So I find a more creative space and a more productive space in a more moody piece. Mm-hmm. So as far as weight, I think, most people kind of think of weight in terms of Metallica.
Yeah.
Some of your heavier bands, Slayer, but I find weight in things like PJ Harvey and Gillian Welch and a band called Low.
A great band.
I feel that's where I find weight, in those almost, they're uplifting, but mostly sad. But because they're sad, they're uplifting to me.
It's the pendulum.
I get more done.
It swings both ways.
Yeah.
The pendulum swings both. Well, Thank you for spending some time on The Void.
This is an experience of the void.
Welcome to The Void.
Hi, thanks for having me in the void. On the void.
You. Yeah, we're deep in the void. I'm excited to hear a new album for the first time in 5 years. This is an exciting moment.
Yeah, it's an exciting moment for me too, because it's really good.
It is really good. It's sort of a bit spectacular, to be honest.
Good, thank you.
I'd pretty much say you've reached a new peak, as a band, in
what way? You tell me and I'll tell you if I agree.
Well, I think the visuals, for me, I started playing it against the 2001 Space Odyssey theme and against the trailer, and it actually really works. And then there's elements that are like a goth club where there's hair flipping and stomping. And then there's other parts that just feel like a really emotional scene in a movie. So I feel like if things are conjuring that, that's probably a good sign.
That's so funny you should say that, because I was thinking the other day, because sometimes people are like, what's it like to be in a band as Maynard? And I was just thinking okay, well, it's as if this cast of Monty Python woke up inside Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and every now and then it turns into a Space Odyssey or Forbidden Zone. It's it's funny that you should mention Space Odyssey, and also it's funny that you should be so OCD that you will take the trailer and play it against the theme to a movie.
Well, I had to check you know, like you have to like check your instincts, because I'm like, there's this element, like with futuristic stuff, there's this element of nostalgia, almost like 70s supercomputers sort of vibe.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. 70s and 80s for sure.
so what would we be surprised by? Like, where does the hilarity come in? Because it's kind of serious music.
Well, I mean, what do you mean in terms of the music or in the visuals or
Well,
the
okay,
general
actually,
story?
I've just combined two questions. What does
Okay.
it see and feel and taste like to you? Like, what would it be in your mind?
The album
This
or
album,
the general
yeah.
experience of the live set?
I'd say this album first.
I think, you know, to me, there is a certain nostalgia about it, even though it feels, and I'm trying not to sound like a, can I swear?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I have to choose my swear words too, because some are worse than others, but whatever. I try not to sound like a ponce, let's say, because even though there's a lot of nostalgia, there's kind of, it sounds somewhat futuristic in the sense that, you know, watching Space Odyssey or Close Encounters, even though they're old movies and it's everything you've already seen, they still feel futuristic when you watch them.
100%.
You know, they still have that sense of futurism and like the mysterious unknown. And I think I get that sense from listening to this record.
Yeah.
It's kind of mysterious, and you know, the music that Matt made for this album, he started out with his soundscapes. It was really inspired by certain really niche synthesizers and samplers, one of them being a Fairlight 2 from 1983, which was used a lot on Hounds of Love by Kate Bush. Has it all over it, like it blew open that record. And you know, early Peter Gabriel records, yes, used it a lot, and Art of Noise and all that kind of stuff. So and also the synclavier and some other like super niche analog and digital stuff from, you know, earlier decades.
It's like the Natural Born Killers of because Natural Born Killers uses like 16 different kinds of film stock. So this is the same thing, like 16 different flavors.
Yeah, it is almost like film stock. That's a good way of putting it. But yet over all of these songs and these different vibes and different soundscapes and different movies, if you like, there was this general thread running through of these instruments, which are very specific, very particular, very constraining.
Yeah.
In that, you know, first of all, they're oversized, they're fucking huge, and they're really, really rare. And he searched them out because he loved the sound of them so much, and purchased them, which in itself is a feat, no mean feat. So he had them, and he used, now the Fairlight is takes up about as much space as my car, and there's really only one or two things you can do with it, but it's also really hard to learn and kind of weird to do. So I think being someone that's super technically minded and very adept and agile in that arena, he really enjoyed having these constraints and having, you know, being able to, you know, disappear, if you like, into the creative process with these constraints. And I think it just created a really, really strong sound bed, and that was the inspiration for, you know, the stories and the characters or whatever that Maynard came up with. So for me, listening to these sounds to your question, I think subconsciously it brings up the 80s a little bit.
Yeah.
But, you know, in a good way,
club.
like Japan and Kate Bush for me.
Yeah.
Peter Gabriel, Roxy music, that's probably earlier in the 70s, but still these synthesizers and stuff. That to me, it's in my blood, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So it just started me buzzing in that natural way. And also I was using an effects unit called an Eventide 4500, which is, for me, it was a tool with which I could get away from the normal routes that I go with singing, like coming up with parts and singing backing vocals on these things and just making it simple. I was trying to turn my voice into its own instrument that was playing its own parts within the song, obviously still serving the song as much as possible, but doing something unique and strong.
Is that a new experience for you? Because obviously you've played with a ton of different people. Is this the first time you've kind of gone down that path, or is that sort of a recurring theme?
No, it's something that I've done a little bit every now and then, but I really fell in love with this piece of gear more so than I have done with anything else in the past. And it's just like this one box where you can just get lost in all of these crazy sounds. And there were times I'd spend like 5 hours experimenting with this one box for one vocal sound.
Awesome.
And just not come up. You think I came up with just needed to rein it in, but still it was really fun. I had to go through that process in order to get to where I got to in the end, and it was just a really fun experience for me, especially since I have a 3-year-old. So it was nice to go and be in a place where I could disappear into the ether.
That's a really special thing. Well, what do you guys do all this together as a group? Like, do you know when do you say pause? Like, when do you go, okay, it's done? Does Maynard do that? Do you do that? Does everyone kind of go, okay? Because I can imagine it could go infinitely if you wanted it. It sounds like it would be hard to end.
Because we're all pretty busy, and particularly Maynard, who's got like 500 jobs and businesses. We're always extremely deadline driven band. So, when before the pandemic, Maynard was on tour, and I think the plan was to be doing that for this year, and then we were going to release something early next year. And then when this happened, he quickly decided that it was going to be released this year, because he had time to do stuff that he hadn't initially anticipated having. So we decided when a record was going to come out, and then you work back and think, okay, so when does it need to be delivered in order to get CDs and vinyl made? And then okay, so let's work back from that. When do we need to start mixing, which means we need to be done recording by this point, so
it gets contained.
Yeah, absolutely. Which means also within the time that we have, it creates a really good energy, creatively, because it's constant. You're doing it every day. You're not like going in once a week to try and get some ideas down, or doing it from home or whatever. It's like you're constantly in the studio. I think that's important, keeping that portal open in order to keep the energy moving. And then, when it gets stagnant in LA, where Matt and I are, we will jump in the car and drive to northern Arizona, where Maynard lives, and he has a whole studio with a 360 view of the beautiful northern Arizona mountains, and
awesome.
It shakes things up a little bit. It can help. It's like opening a window.
I don't know why this makes me think of that song Oceans on the last album, but it kind of does. That felt like space. I could get really weird here. But that is that's it sounds like you guys are immersed in a world. And I mean, I guess when it comes to like harmonizing seems from the outside like one of the most intimate ways you can kind of make music with someone. You started as a touring member of the band. What was it like when you first started doing that, and how has that sort of relationship with him evolved?
Actually, my first ever thing I did for this band was my audition, in fact, was Humbling River.
Awesome.
So I drove to Arizona. I was covered head to toe in bed bug bites. I had to buy an outfit that covered every single inch of my body. And I showed up. It was the first time I ever met Maynard, looking like the Elephant Woman. And he was having some issue with the winery, so he was cranky as fuck. And then Matt and I just kind of went into the room and started working on it, and Maynard was in and out. But you know, despite his mood and my, I don't know what you would call it, disease.
Hey, you were battling the elements, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a plague. You were just prepping for the pandemic, you know.
Yeah,
like
it was true.
Yeah.
I think, well, this was 10 years ago, but I think that I don't know. I think through all that, it was just an obvious kind of thing of like, yeah, this is someone that I can work with.
Yeah.
You know, he already liked what I was. He already liked my sound and my voice and my choices and my ideas. That's why I was asked to join. So, you know, there was no real kind of direction needed. It was just like, here's the thing, do your thing. So, you know, it was just a great experience for me walking into a situation like that with, you know, someone with that kind of history and experience, and just having a completely different writing and working ethos to me, and it still feeling like natural, feeling like you were home, you know, and feeling an immediate kind of synergy within the trio, and, you know, feeling like, never wondering if you made the wrong decision, you know, just
whoa,
always
that's huge.
Everybody always just trying to do a thing better than they've done it before.
What are the starkest sort of contrasts between the way you approach songwriting?
Well, for me, it's an extraordinarily isolated experience personally, when I write my solo stuff, and, you know, probably somewhat painful and just, you know, fear driven. I don't know. I'm making it sound a lot worse than it is.
No. Art is torture, man. Art is torture. I relate.
Yeah, it's a little bit more. It's somewhat. It's probably not the right word, but I think in order to get the point over quickly, it's torturous for me to do it by myself. But, you know, extraordinarily a kind of joy when I hit on something that I couldn't experience anywhere else. You know, whereas the situation with Matt and Maynard it's just a good synergy. It's like a, you know.
Well, they come from Perfect Circle Land, don't they?
Well, no, Matt doesn't at all. Matt's like, well, I think maybe Matt helped on a couple of Perfect Circle records,
but he wasn't in it. But I guess that was the thing they did before.
That's how they met. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's like it's a really, I don't know, it's a really interesting thing when you kind of hear that sort of alchemy and stuff, because, you know, you can listen to all the stuff that came before it, but it's pretty clear this is sort of a unique thing. And I think your voice is interesting because you do take risks, and like you can be listening to a tune of yours and then you'll do something and you're like, oh, that's cool, I didn't even know you could do that, you know, like, is that like, you're like, oh wow, you just took it somewhere else. That's cool.
Yeah, I love that. I love when I'm writing or working on something and I'll do something intuitively, or I don't know, a lot of times I have to get to a point where I feel like I've hit a wall, and then, you know, there's a certain part of your brain that you enter that lets a lot of things go, and you do something and you feel like, and then you're like, oh, I broke a rule. Like, that's what it feels like. And I don't know, that's a good feeling to me, because something that works, but, you know, is outside of your conscious idea of what is supposed to be there. That's just exciting stuff for me. And I love accessing that. And I love reaching those peaks and ideas. And that's what the creative process is for me. And those are the joys that I was talking about. Reach those things.
Well, I was talking to Michael from Swans about this, and he's like, I was like, cool. It's like a greasy channel. You got like an oiled channel, and some people have an easy ride from that other place to your hands or your voice or whatever. But it is.
No, I don't.
Add some ego and stuff. That's like, it's really interesting as well. Just to, I guess, well, it just made me think of it because I spoke to him last week. But Barney from Napalm Death was talking about everything has to be topical on some level because it's of this time. And I think this album is quite topical with the whole concept. Like, how do you see the lyrical, like the stories and stuff? Because they are stories rather than lyrics in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, Maynard doesn't talk about his vocals, so I would never ever his lyrics. I mean, so I would never ever try to do that. But
actually, yeah,
I think
there's rules about this stuff.
Well, not rules. I think ultimately it's for your own benefit. I think he just feels like if he lays it out for you, then you don't get to have your own experience with it. And I think that's really ultimately what his greatest gift is that he can do that so well.
Yeah.
And there's no enjoyment in listening to someone mansplain something to you, you know? So why bother listening to music if it's just telling you how to feel and what you already know? Like, there's got to be some space in there. Yeah.
Like, sit down with your friends and nerdily, you know, he does attract a certain kind of dork. I say that with respect and love. To all you out there. But you don't want like anyone sitting around.
Believe me, I've seen it.
Yeah. Have you seen anything super nuts in your time?
Yeah.
What's the craziest that you've seen?
I don't even want to, give it time and space.
Okay.
Because for the most part, it's, it metamorphosizes negatively.
Really?
So, yeah, there's just like some pretty interesting people out there. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in terms of this record, a lot of it was recorded. His vocals, lyrics, for the most part, I think were written before the end of last year. So,
wow. That's weird.
I know that we recorded Apocalyptical like in July or August of 2019.
Whoa.
But it just, right now, we're just having a super magnified version of all the crazy shit and intensity that has been going on, at least for the last 5 years, but, probably the last 30. Who knows? Even more.
Yeah.
Everything's politically polarized right now. Everything you see on social media is made to incense you. Everything you see on the news is, are we sure it's true? No, we're definitely not sure it's true. Like, there's just a lot of confusion, a lot of polarization. And, I think more and more it just brings the onus back on the individual to be eternally vigilant about seeking the truth. Because it's out there. And just not believing what you see and knowing yourself well enough not to be incensed by whatever the algorithm is feeding you every time you look at your phone, and to be empathetic, stand back. You don't have to take a side. Like when was the rule that you had to take a side in order to not be a fascist or, I don't know. I think there's just a lot of intensity right now, especially here. I don't know whether you have it there too, but.
Well, we're lucky in that we kind of the pandemic, they locked down Melbourne for like the last 5 months, like to the point where we weren't allowed out. So we were actually down to 0 or 2 cases, and the other states are 0 cases, which is a very fucking unusual state of being in the world of the pandemic. So we're it's a very strange experience to look out to the rest of the world and go, holy shit, like it's never been, I've always felt isolated here, but to be on this island, it's never been safer. Which is, I don't want to tell people, I feel like an asshole telling you this. Like,
no, don't feel so. I just realized, actually, having an interview with another person in Australia, that he asked me how the pandemic was, and I was obviously just talking about it's at the beginning of it was so exciting because everybody thought they were gonna like do all the things they'd always wanted to do, and get a hobby and clean out their garage and do all of that stuff, and then it just suddenly became apparent that you're not going to have any time to do anything. And then, you know, as time goes on, there's just this weird psychological pressure that it's just never going to end. And it's just can really fucking get to you.
Yeah, dude, it's like the end game. I'm like sad at the blocked borders as well. Like, are we never going to get to see the rest of the world? Like, it's never happened like that. And yeah,
well, that's the point.
Yeah.
But the difference here is that everybody, it's the choice of the individual. You can literally go to a restaurant and sit outside, or go get coffee, or, you know, the borders are not closed if you have a reason to go somewhere. And certainly domestic flights are fully open. Yes. So it just made me realize, like, oh man, you guys are really locked down. You must be going fucking insane.
It's pretty weird, because living in Australia, you've always felt isolated, and you've always felt like the rest of the world is happening on the other side of it. But it's, look, and it's like every way of experiencing this is sort of psychologically damaging. And kind of the one good thing is how much music is coming out of it, because I think so many people are making music. I feel like Blood Moon, this thing with Chelsea Wolfe and Converge, is almost like the Puscifer sister group. Like, I'd just like to say you guys should all tour together, because I think
what is this? Chelsea Wolfe and who?
Converge. You know, the hardcore.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know about it. I like her a lot. I'll check it out.
Yeah, I'm just like, you guys should really tour together, because I think that would
I know Chelsea opened for Perfect Circle on the last tour.
Yeah, see, that it totally makes sense. And it just back to like the polarizing thing. It's like, I think it goes back to it's like regressing to this tribal thing of like, if you went against the tribe back then and you were extradited from the tribe, you died. And it's almost like we're regressing back to that, and like this George Orwell kind of bullshit where we're not allowed to dance, like, on another note. What kind of, and also I'll get off my soapbox momentarily. But like the way the arts is being treated around the world, the way musicians are being treated, like it's not important, like they don't deserve help. And it's just, it makes me so angry, because how the hell else did you get through this without the art? Like, actually, on that note, one more thing. Degrees of heaviness. So we have a thing on this show where we talk to everyone about what they see as heavy music, because everyone has a different perspective. We spoke to like a guy who makes R&B and soul music last night, and he's like, I think it's 10 zillion light years away is a Stevie Wonder song, and he's like, that's heavy music for me. What is heavy music to you?
Shit.
Yeah, that's kind of a big question.
I don't know. There's so many different reasons why something would feel heavy to me.
Yeah, I guess.
But you know, my early years were laden with like early Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And to me, that just, no matter how sophisticated my music tastes can become, or how much I can go off in like a different direction for a minute, like, you know, of course, listening to free jazz by Ornette Coleman is about as heavy as it can get in terms of like what your brain capacity can allow for. But I don't know, it doesn't matter where I go off to in my life, that, you know, Led Zeppelin is always the nucleus for me, no matter what. So
that's awesome.
It's heavy in that it's there's an omnipresence of it.
Yeah.
And I can't hear anything up to Physical Graffiti without having some kind of smell, memory, sensation, you know.
That's so awesome, because I never would have picked it. That's killer. It's always interesting, like the stuff that like that kind of leaves that mark, like that indelible kind of mark. Actually, just one more thing. I think I'm keeping you have to go in a sec. I'm stealing you for a while.
I don't know, I think I'm okay right now.
You're good. With the bullet train, what's it called, bullet train to Iowa?
Yes.
I feel like guitars are like a huge thing in that. Like they just kind of come out of nowhere. Was that like a thing?
Guitars?
Yeah, like it just got real snarly in that song.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that was just one of those songs when, you know, in that earlier folder that I was talking about that Matt had put in there, just had that kind of bluesy vibe to it. And it never felt like it should be taken away from that. It just wanted to be that thing. And then, you know, as soon as Maynard put that vocal on it, it was like, okay, well, that's what it is then. So why not just make it a cool version of that? So
yeah, because it feels a bit different.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
I agree.
And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Look at you guys taking a left turn.
Yeah, and I think, you know, with that kind of thing, there's also a nod to conditions of my parole and all, you know, we're still those people doing that music. So
how much have you guys changed, do you think, as songwriters and stuff in the last 5 years?
I mean, I don't know. It's hard to know when you're in it, when you're the one that's developing and you're the one that's changing and you're the one that's learning and you're the one that, you know, constantly, I think all three of us want to just keep doing things better than we've done them before. That's generally an ongoing drive in our lives, not just musically. So I don't know. It'd be hard to look back on that.
What about you, the way you see Maynard and Matt, how they have changed? Or is it always just the same and you just kind of slow increments, so it's kind of hard to go?
I can talk a little bit to like how it's changed working with them, like watching us all work as a trio. And I just feel like they just developed this symbiosis of trust, really, and it just everything got really quick. And that there's still this push, because there has to be, I think, in order to create anything that's interesting. But for the most part, it's not a difficult writing environment.
Awesome.
We're all our biggest critics. We all have our own quality control that, you know, easily outdoes anyone else's quality control of us that could ever happen. Like, we're all just assholes to ourselves, but
to each other.
No, to ourselves. Assholes to each other.
It's just so difficult. It's like you say it's Monty Python, but it's really torture.
Well, the torture is just my own inner dialogue.
Do you watch silly stuff together? Like, how do you guys blow off steam? How do you get the comedy in when this is arduous?
I think ultimately it's comedy first, especially when Maynard is around. But, you know, one of the earlier things that we bonded on was British humor, like Monty Python and
Young Ones? Not too silly?
Well, I love the Young Ones, actually. Don't know if he does, but I would definitely hazard a guess that he does. Like, his humor is really daft. And
kooky. There's a kooky side. I mean,
you know, like League of Gentlemen and Little Britain and all that kind of stuff. He's driven, I think, a lot of healing for him has come from comedy and funny stuff. So it's just a natural language for him.
Yeah. Well, it's good, that balance, you know, being the Prince of Darkness, you know.
Yeah, I think it can be confusing to people who are coming in from the outside and not expecting it or understanding it, or, you know, not being used to having comedy and serious fucking like badass lyrics in the same, you know, listening experience. And I think that's kind of our strength, in that it is expect the unexpected. You know, at the same time, it takes you putting a lot of trust in the listener to be able to accept all of that without being intimidated by any of it.
There's elements of Puscifer that are ridiculous.
Yes,
like,
thank you.
Like V's for Vagina, Donkey Punch the Night, like they are ridiculous. Like, you just kind of go, like, you get a cool smirk, because it's like, fuck, some bands take themselves so fucking seriously that they'd never do something like that. You know, is that
right? But then you listen to
and jam out these ideas and go, how ridiculous can we get?
No, I mean, maybe Matt and Maynard did to start with, but all of the lyrics are Maynard. They come from Maynard. So, you know, I'm sure he showed up with the lyrics to Dozo and Matt was like, okay.
Here we go.
Yeah, but, you know, I think
it is unique. Yeah.
It is unique. And I think it's also, I don't know. I'm not inside his head, but I'm sure there's an element of test to it. And I'm sure there's also an element of I don't give a fuck.
That whole nothing to prove thing must be nice. I mean, you've been making songs for 20 years. Does that spin you out?
Sometimes, but
it's awesome.
Mostly just I don't feel like I'm done. So I'm okay with it because it just feels like a part of my journey. You know, I think if I felt like I was done, it would spin me the fuck out how long I've been doing it. But
it's like Henry Rollins in his podcast. He's like, yeah, I just woke up and I was just like, no, I don't have any more music left. I'm done. And I was like, that must be weird. And I kind of feel like that sounds horrible.
Yeah, it would sound horrible to me, but you know what? Horses for courses.
Yeah.
He's a different kind of person, you know, and he also has a lot of other things to say. So
it's not like the bloke stopped talking. I mean, he never shut up. But what else are you working on? Are you working on some like solo stuff as well, or? Yeah,
well, like I said, I have a 3-year-old, so sometimes that gets tricky, but
that's the whole project in itself.
I mean, we're just coming to the release of the Puscifer record, so give me a couple days and then, you know, I'm going to go into the studio and start finishing my own record. But, you know, I'm in a relationship with another artist, so it's a balance. And especially right now where you can't have a nanny and your child can't be in preschool, like you have to, you know, really work to do what you do.
Yeah. Well, it's a weird time to be alive. Do you think?
I'd rather be alive than dead, though.
Well, but it is like an existential reckoning. Like, I don't think anything could really be more an accurate phrase to describe the experience of right now.
I do feel like there's, you know, an underlying moment within this where everyone has had to take a step back and really just analyze what's important to them.
Yeah.
And learn how to. There's a lot of noise in our lives, I think. And what this has done is just wiped out everything that isn't essential in your life. And, you know, I think for the most part, if life ever gets back to normal, that's going to be something within the people that lived through this pandemic that will benefit them as humans.
I have a dream that 2021, 22, I've decided that we're just going to start the 20s then. This didn't happen. This just was a year, the 20s, that will have like this Renaissance era, because it's like the plague, like the Roaring 20s happened after that first plague, and I'm like, surely we can have some like Roaring 20s. I kind of like fantasize about us all going back to live music and just being like cradled in each other's
crazy arms. Just like licking each other.
Like just licking just disgusting, grinding all up on. I'm like, I just want to dirty dance with a stranger, like not in a gross way, you know, like, you know, because I think, and Puscifer is a band you can dance to. Like I gotta say, I do love it when it's got like, not like in a conscious way, but it kind of has that swing. Even if it's a completely different kind of a swing to what, like a clutch.
I think it is conscious. I do think it is conscious. But again, like it's not just, it's not a bullshit dance groove. It's like, it's a bit more interesting.
Was Led Zeppelin the first thing you fell in love with?
I think, yeah, and that was just a constant presence in my life. Like it was just always there. You know, early Roxy music, the first 3 records in particular, like Japan was a big thing for me when I was a kid. Tin Drum and Gentlemen Take Polaroids, and you know, it's those things I fell in love with. And then as I began to get older, you know, when Nevermind came out, it just fucking blew a hole in my wall because I had never heard anything like it. I hadn't heard the Pixies at that point, so I didn't know that something even similar to it even existed. But everything about, and I heard that on the radio, which was just another level of like, wow, this came from out of fucking space.
Yeah, totally.
And then, I got introduced to the bands and
yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
there's
know,
such
music.
good melodies. There's such good melody writers, like they're probably the best ones, like Kurt Cobain and Tom York. Like, there's such good melody writers.
Well, I feel like Kurt Cobain he wrote like nursery rhymes for fucked up older people. It's just,
maybe fucked up older people need nursery rhymes more.
yeah, it was just like it's like a hook that you couldn't even walk by without it getting into you. And I think it changed music forever.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt. And I'm so glad that I have that moment, that I was cognizant and I was old enough to realize this is important. And not even like consciously, it just changed me as an individual growing up around that time and whatever headspace I was in, and then hearing that I was like, what the fuck? And then in hindsight later in life, just realizing like, yeah, you were in exactly the right time to experience that. Must have been like when people heard rock and roll for the first time, or
totally.
It's just
I just
really cool shit.
I became a teenager in the 90s, but in the late 90s. So I just got to hear about how I just missed it like by a whisker, but it's not like the aftermath kind of thing. And it's almost like, it was still good. I mean, that was an optimistic time to grow up. Like, compared to now, Have you had an existential reckoning? I will let you go. I'm trying to. I try to be good and not steal people for 100 years.
Actually, I think there is a call coming.
Oh, you have to go
now, but go on. Ask your last question.
Have you had an existential reckoning this year?
Well,
yeah.
I'm the kind of person that will have one every year, a couple times a year.
Well, that's well. On that note, I like that as an ending. I think that wraps it up nice. Well, thanks heaps for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for making a really good thing.
Thanks.
Yeah.
For listening and telling people about it.
Come back here when you can. It's going to take 100 years.
Oh, and don't forget to buy a ticket for the live stream. I think I'm supposed to say that.
Is that on Friday? Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay.
Maybe you can say a little thing about it.
That's guys. So buy a ticket to the live stream on Friday
at pusciferlive.com.
This is an experience of the void.